through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki. We're here all the way through until midday with a show full of all of today's biggest stories and lots of discussion topics as well.
Yes, we are. Make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those throughout the show. But first, let's give you the latest news with Rosie.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. The government will reportedly announce compulsory COVID vaccines for frontline NHS staff in England. It's understood employees will be given a spring deadline for both doses. Around 100,000 NHS workers haven't had their first jab. The Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to apologise for the Tory sleaze row. Boris Johnson, who visited Northumberland yesterday, reportedly returned to London before a debate in the Commons had finished, but decided not to take part. Cabinet Minister Stephen Barclay told MPs attempting to change standard rules to prevent Owen Paterson from being suspended was a mistake. Ministers will invest more than £200 million into small nuclear reactor as part of research. Now let's look at what's happening in the border between Poland and Belarus. Migrants have been moving over the border. We've had more on this story across the day with our Home Affairs editor, Mark White. England and Manchester United striker Marcus Rashford will be awarded an MBE by the Duke of Cambridge. The 24-year-old is being recognised for his campaign last summer to ensure no vulnerable children went hungry. It resulted in the government changing its policy on free school meals and vouchers during the lockdown. You are up to date. I'll have more for you on all of these stories at 10 o'clock.
Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Mercy Muroki and me, Patrick Christys. We've got a show full of all of today's biggest topics, biggest stories, biggest guests, and all of the things that you care about. Here's what's coming up.
Yes, one of the signatories of the Good Friday Agreement has said that the agreement has led to a weakening of the union between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, and says there's no basis to continue supporting it. We'll be talking to former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, about this and the continuing row with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol.
We will indeed, and we'll be live outside the Foreign Office speaking to Richard Ratcliffe, the husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, about the current hunger strike with which he's doing at the moment. He's currently in his 17th day, and the progress is made in trying to get his wife freed from jail, so stay with us for that.
Yes, also on the show, a gentleman who was injured whilst caving in the Brecon Beacons on Saturday has been rescued after 2 days of being trapped. We'll be bringing you the latest on what's the longest cave rescue requiring a stretcher in British history.
Yes, we'll also have much more for you later on, and as usual you can get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, of course, I'm going to give my views on the way that we treat animals. People who abuse animals should be prosecuted in the same way that you'd prosecute abuse against a human. A video has emerged of a female fox hunter appearing to kick and then punch a horse repeatedly. Now, in case you missed this video, here it is, but just a warning, it's quite distressing to watch. Let's play it.
No, it's not sexual.
She just kicked that horse.
Yes, now, supposedly we're a nation of animal lovers, but it's surprising how long it's taken us for the law to catch up with that. Now, this lady has been named, anyway, in reports as Sarah Moulds, and apparently she's actually a primary school teacher. I mean, I'm all for a bit of more discipline in schools, but if this is how this woman treats animals, I'd raise serious questions about whether or not she's fit to look after children. There's a bit of a myth at the moment that fox hunting has stopped. It hasn't. Just look at this recent court case, for example, of 60-year-old Mark Hankinson, who was convicted of encouraging others to hide the illegal hunting of live foxes behind a smokescreen of trail hunting. He was literally dishing out advice on how to hide the fact that you're hunting a fox. The practice is utterly barbaric. What kind of person wakes up in the morning and thinks, right, I'm going to get on a horse, summon the dogs, and I'm going to go out into the countryside and watch a fox get ripped to pieces? A lunatic, a psychopath, an absolute nutter. That's who. I wonder whether or not it's time to ban trail hunting. I suspect it's just a ruse and that actually it's still just fox hunting. I mean, think about it. How can you control a pack of dogs who've been bred to hunt? You're out in the open countryside. You just can't, can you? There's absolutely no animal welfare involved in any element of hunting. Obviously, the fox gets a raw deal. It looks like the horse might get punched in the face by a primary school teacher. There was a recent case where dogs who are no longer of any use were shot in the back of the head. No element of this is good for the animals. It needs to be stopped. And it's only recently that we've recognised that household pets, like dogs, for example, aren't simply property. A law recently came in that will see people sentenced to upwards of 7 years in prison if they nick a dog. Now, I'd actually extend that. If you steal a dog, it's not the same as stealing a bike or a phone or a laptop. You're stealing a member of the family. Now, I've had dogs, and they were more or less like a sibling to me. If someone steals a dog, I think they should be prosecuted in the same way that you would prosecute someone who kidnaps a child. If we really are a nation of animal lovers, we need to get tougher with the people who abuse them. Yeah, it just sickens me because animals are like, there's a certain innocence about animals, isn't there?
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right, and I'm so happy to see that we have the government has been cracking down, getting tougher on people who mistreat animals. And I think it's also worth noting as well, because you'll be aware I like my criminal justice
yes,
stuff.
That's come up a couple of times.
Yes, indeed, and I'll be doing a monologue actually in about an hour. But I've noticed that there is a trend. People who go on to commit, very heinous crimes have often started with abusing animals, and it's in lots of cases this has happened because I do feel that if you can't show sympathy towards or empathy with an animal, an innocent animal, then it does raise questions about your ability to do the same with human beings. And as you said, the fact that this lady is a primary school teacher, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want somebody treating an animal like that teaching my child at all. No. Clearly she has some anger issues or whatever's going on with her, but I absolutely agree we should be as tough as possible.
I think so, absolutely. I think it's an absolute disgrace, really, that these people get away with it. And I think this is the thing, it's one thing banning fox hunting, but is that just lip service, right? Because actually, clearly, it looks to me anyway like it's still happening, right? And it's just this, it's hidden behind this smokescreen of trail hunting. Well, just play it out in reality. If you've got a pack of dogs, right, who are trained and bred to hunt a fox, and you're out in the countryside and they see a fox, which they probably will, well, what happens? You don't call them off, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because there is a big lobby, isn't there, which promotes fox hunting, and obviously it's often people from a particular echelon in society, and they have a lot of money and they have a lot of influence, and it's a cultural thing for that group in society, and obviously they lobby the government to make sure that they don't completely ban trail hunting, even when it's disguised, it's being used as a ruse for fox hunting. So lots of issues at play. But I am glad to see that the government has actually taken action and, is prosecuting people harder who mistreat animals.
Absolutely, yes. Loads of people getting in touch on this. Mixed bag, it's fair to say. GBViews at gbnews.uk. You're conflating pets with working animals and farm animals, and she slapped the animal, not punched it. You silly woke pair. Thank you very much, Michael. I would not like to be your pet, that's for sure. I hesitate to...
She also did kick the...
She also kicked it in the chest. I mean, does it matter if you slap or punch a horse, really? Should be doing it anyway. Anyway, let it go. The government cannot take action to punish cruelty to animals. And this is... Roy doesn't think we can do enough, basically, to actually do that. And quite a few of you, actually, it appears, are bang in favour of fox hunting. So who knew?
Bizarre. That's fair enough, if that's your view. GBnews at gbnews.uk. Keep those coming in. And after the break, we'll be live in Northern Ireland, where there's been an escalating violence in recent days amid rising tensions over the post-Brexit deal for the country. So stay with us for that.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, the fragile peace afforded to Northern Ireland after the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in 1998 is in jeopardy after the leader of one of the agreement signatory parties announced there is no basis for the Unionist majority population to continue to support it. Progressive Unionist Party leader Billy Hutchinson said the agreement has led to an incremental weakening of the union between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. He said he would continue to work with the leaders of other Unionist parties to secure the removal of what he calls the intolerable and constitutionally damaging Northern Ireland Protocol.
Yes, well, our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie joins us live from Belfast with the latest. Doogie, this is a strong statement, isn't it, from Mr Hutchinson?
It is indeed, and he was one of the co-signatories of that agreement. He was one of the representatives of the Ulster Volunteer Force, a paramilitary group, alongside the IRA. Without those two violent people in those talks, it would never ever have happened. Now, tensions have been rising in Belfast over the last while or two. We've been reporting on low-level troubles, and those low levels have become a little bit more violent and a little bit more regular. And some of the arrogance of the politicians behind me here yesterday suggesting that those youths involved in the troubles in those loyalist areas don't understand the protocol and don't understand what it's about. I spent a lot of time in the streets over the weekend, and I was pleasantly surprised to know that those young people know exactly what's going on, what's threatening their UK citizenship and what's threatening their culture. The problems really come is the language out of places like this, and it's coming quite bad between Dublin, Brussels and some of the politicians here. I spoke to Colm Eastwood yesterday, first of all, in this report, and he started off and then did exactly what he shouldn't have done. More burnt buses, police under fire and youths on the streets, all a product of the Northern Ireland Protocol. And politicians claiming that the rhetoric is too much, then doing exactly that.
People like Lord Frost and senior members of the DUP need to think very carefully about the language that they're using, because they are creating more and more instability on the streets of Northern Ireland. Does anybody here or anywhere else in Northern Ireland who has any basic understanding of Irish history think it would be a good idea to put border posts on the island of Ireland? I'm not sure they do.
Now the PUP, the political wing of the loyalist UVF, has withdrawn its support for the Good Friday Agreement, the very institution the protocol supposedly was there to protect.
But what we are saying is that the Good Friday Agreement as it is now wasn't what we signed up to, and what we're asking is for a rebalancing. So that's what we're talking about. People, it's rhetoric whenever we say it, but it's not rhetoric when Republicans say it. And that's the difficulty. The SDLP should listen to what Republicans say and talk about their rhetoric. They should also listen to some of their councillors and see the rhetoric comes out of them. Nothing that I've said today is rhetoric. It's reality. This is what's happening in these communities. And, those young people and others who they're talking about, they talk down, tell them and they think they know everything about the young people and they don't. The reality is that young people's frustrated and they will get involved in acts of violence. This party wants to see these young people develop.
The DUP leader has pointed the finger at Dublin and Brussels for careless talk during these tense times.
Well, I think Colm Eastwood would be better served if he was to point the finger towards Dublin and the comments of Simon Coveney, who is firing warning shots at the UK government, using megaphone diplomacy instead of getting around the table and trying to resolve these issues. Maybe Colm might also look at the comments, the disgraceful comments made by an EU spokesman last night when he said that the EU was prepared for peace but ready for war. What does that mean? What kind of rhetoric is that to engage in at a time of tension? Surely we should all be taking steps to calm things down.
One thing is for sure, with every political failure, violence fills a vacuum, and with no support in the unionist communities, the protocol will have to change. Doogie Beattie, GB News, Belfast. Well, you can see from that report that here behind me now, this has gone into election mode, and we really do need parties like the PUP who act on the ground and are able to talk to these people at a street level, and them being missing is a big problem. Other problems, of course, is the likes of the Alliance Party, the Ulster Unionist Party. They sense that election, if they just keep quiet and don't do anything, don't come to a microphone, well, they'll be okay. In Dublin, we have Simon Coveney and Micheál Martin, who are sitting across a very shaky coalition government. If Article 16 is imposed, the chances are that government will collapse. All of them are beating their political chests, but every time that happens, the tension rises a little bit further here.
Well, Doogie, thank you for bringing us that report, and we can actually stay on that story now and talk to former First Minister of Northern Ireland and GB News presenter as well, Arlene Foster, who joins us now. Thank you for joining us this morning, Arlene. DUP leader Jeffrey Donaldson has warned that significant gaps remain between the UK and the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol. In your view, what remains to be done?
Well, hi to you both, Patrick and Mercy, this morning. I think we need to step back and remember what the protocol is about. The protocol was put in place supposedly to protect the single market of the European Union and make sure that there wasn't a border on the island of Ireland. But by doing that, what was created was actually a border down the Irish Sea, because Northern Ireland is still in the single market for goods. We are in the UK customs territory, but we're in the single market for goods, which means that we have to apply rules and regulation from the European Union without any say at all over those rules and regulations. And it is quite significant that Billy Hutchison should come out yesterday and make this statement. Billy Hutchison has always been a firm supporter of the Belfast Agreement. He was one of the negotiators, and it's very significant that he has now decided that the protocol does so much violence to the Belfast Agreement that he can no longer support that agreement. And I very much hope that not only our own government, but that the European Union, who has, and you heard it there in Doogie's report, have resorted to quite a lot of rhetoric. We heard from Maros Sefcovic, the Vice President of the European Commission, just last Friday, telling us that if Article 16 was triggered by the United Kingdom's government, and of course we know that the circumstances and the evidence is there to do that, we heard that back in July, he said that if that was done, despite the fact that it's in the protocol and there's a process for doing that, that it would bring serious consequences. Then on Saturday, as you know, we had Sir John Major, who is a huge Europhile. He came along and said that if the government triggered Article 16 to deal with the problems in the protocol, that it would be colossally stupid. So there does seem to be a growing sense of the government may look to Article 16. Those on the European side, including the Irish government, including people like Sir John Major, are fearful of Article 16 being triggered because they know then that it will show that the European Union has not been acting in good faith and not trying to sort these difficulties out.
Do you believe that there's a solution at all to this that both sides will ever actually agree to?
Well, you know, there was a solution way back in 2018, 2019, Patrick, and the unfortunate thing for those of us who live in Northern Ireland was that it was rejected. We heard from Colm Eastwood, the SDLP leader, saying that we can't have border posts on the island of Ireland. There was never any need to have border posts on the island of Ireland. They could have been dealt with through intelligence, through risk analysis, through using technology. We use technology all the time to track goods. We know that there's a lot of goods come across from Great Britain into Northern Ireland solely to be in the destination of Northern Ireland. They were never going to go on into the single market. So we could have dealt with all of that. But unfortunately, because the Irish government, because the European Union saw an opportunity to actually separate Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK and in effect punish the United Kingdom for actually having the temerity to vote for Brexit, they decided to push. And they had, of course, at the time, Theresa May as the Prime Minister. She was very fearful of what would happen if she didn't go along with their interpretation of the Belfast Agreement. And therefore, we are where we are. So it is unfortunate that we find ourselves in this position. But there were solutions that were offered up at the time. They were dismissed, Patrick. You may recall they were called unicorn solutions. Well, those unicorn solutions don't seem very strange anymore.
And to many people in Northern Ireland just sort of going about their daily life, all of this seems a bit like politicking, really, and it seems all a bit detached. I just want to ask you, what does this mean for the people of Northern Ireland? Because it's emerged this morning that buses have been suspended in the Greater Belfast areas yesterday evening. This is following the hijacking of 2 buses within a week, and this is apparently in protest against the protocol. So are we likely to see this continued escalation of violence on the streets as well?
Well, I very much hope not, and I welcome the fact that the leader of the PUP, Billy Hutchison, said, look, he was very much still wanting to see peace in Northern Ireland. He did not want to see violence erupting. There has been sporadic incidences of violence, mostly in Belfast, it has to be said, in the surrounding area. The way to deal with this is through political negotiation. The way to deal with this is through invoking Article 16 and finding solutions, because it is very clear that the European Union is not interested in finding a solution, and therefore Article 16 will have to be invoked. We heard at the weekend that they're actually delaying the United Kingdom government's entry into Horizon 2020, which is their flagship scientific programme. And that is all to give them leverage over Northern Ireland, which I think is absolutely unreal and should not be accepted by our government. So there's a long way to go in this. I think that Article 16 needs to be triggered quickly. You may say, what impact is this having on everyday lives for people living in Northern Ireland? It's actually cutting down on our consumer choice. It's cutting down on our shopping, and it's causing more cost for businesses in Northern Ireland as they have to pay more to get goods from Great Britain. And that's not what it should be, that we're in the United Kingdom.
All right, Arlene, thank you so much. Arlene Foster there, just whizzing you through, picking through that minefield, really, of what's going on in Northern Ireland at the moment. Thank you very much.
Yes, and keep all your thoughts coming into us on GBViews at gbnews.uk. We've spoken about animal cruelty this morning, something that a lot of viewers have opinions on. It's kind of split.
It is, weirdly.
So do keep your views coming in, and we'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after a short break.
Hello, good morning. A milder start to the day for many of us, but with a lot of cloud and, in some places, outbreaks of rain. Otherwise, increasingly through the day, sunny spells will develop away from this cold front, which is slowing down as it pushes southeastwards. It will stall across central parts of the UK through the rest of the day. And it's either side of that where we'll see the best of the weather, or at least the brightest of the weather. Some sunshine first thing, northern Scotland, for example, parts of Northern Ireland. A bit chillier here. Further showers pushing in, though, into the northwest, along with a blustery breeze. A lot of mist and low cloud first thing in the southeast, but that will lift and we'll see some sunshine develop here. In between, a lot of low cloud, Wales and northern England especially, with some outbreaks of persistent rain, mainly over the higher ground. But it's mild in the south, 15 or 16 Celsius, whilst it feels fresher further north for Scotland and Northern Ireland. And then into the evening, well, some southward progression with this weather system, but really it just lingers through central parts. So I think southwest England, Wales, the Midlands seeing further bursts of rain at times, whilst to the southeast a lot of low cloud and mist overnight. A mild start here, whilst clear spells across northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland sees a slightly fresher start, but with a few showers for Scotland mainly. Those blustery showers, heavy across the Northern Isles, will continue through much of Wednesday, whilst it's in the south where we keep the cloud and some outbreaks of rain, but most of the rain fairly light, outbreaks of drizzle at times as well, and a mild day to come on Wednesday with temperatures of 13 or 14 in the south, whilst it's fresher further north, 10 to 12 Celsius. Thursday looks mostly dry, but there will be a lot of cloud around, particularly in the south and the west. More unsettled weather arrives in the north on Friday with wind and rain at times, but high pressure is expected this weekend.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Murogi. We're here all the way through until midday with a show full of all of today's biggest stories and lots of discussions as well.
Yes, we'll also be going to your views throughout the show on our usual email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, so keep those coming in. But first, let's give you the latest news with the Rosie.
It's 10 o'clock. Let's get you up to date. The government will reportedly announce compulsory COVID vaccines for frontline NHS staff in England. It's understood employees will be given a spring deadline for both doses. Around 100,000 NHS workers haven't yet had their first jab. Care home workers in England have already been told they must be fully vaccinated by this Thursday. The Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to apologise for the Tory sleaze row. Boris Johnson, who visited Northumberland yesterday, reportedly returned to London before a debate in the Commons had finished, but decided not to take part. Cabinet Minister Stephen Barclay told MPs attempting to change standards rules to prevent Owen Paterson from being suspended was a mistake. Labour's Shadow Community Secretary Steve Reid told GB News the Prime Minister needs to address it.
My message to Boris Johnson is apologise for what you've done wrong and work with us to put it right again. This is something that could bring the whole of the House of Commons together. The vast majority of us want a system that the public can have confidence in. It's the Prime Minister whose disregard for the rules is poisoning the well right now, and we really need to come together to put this right.
A man who spent more than 2 days trapped in a cave is said to be doing remarkably well. The experienced caver was in the Brecon Beacons when he fell on Saturday, suffering what's thought to be a broken jaw, leg and spinal injuries. His ordeal lasted 54 hours as teams of people worked in shifts to bring him to the surface. More than 240 people were involved in the operation. Tensions are rising on the Poland-Belarus border, where thousands of migrants are gathering. It comes a day after hundreds of people broke through barriers and entered Poland. Polish security forces described the influx of migrants as a coordinated attempt to massively enter the territory, and they accused the Belarusian government of launching hybrid attacks against the country. The government is going to invest more than £200 million into small nuclear reactor research as part of plans to hit net zero targets. The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, has described it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move away from reliance on fossil fuels. The small modular reactors could be ready by the early 2030s and have the potential to be less expensive than building traditional nuclear power plants. Now, there's a lower risk of developing heart disease if you go to sleep between 10 and 11 p.m, according to new research. The study is based on data from more than 88,000 people, and they found there was a 25% higher risk of cardiovascular disease if you go to bed after midnight. Falling asleep early also came with its own downsides. Dozing off before 10 p.m. had a 24% increase of heart disease. England and Manchester United striker Marcus Rashford will be awarded an MBE by the Duke of Cambridge. The 24-year-old is being recognised for his campaign last summer to ensure no vulnerable children went hungry. It resulted in the government changing its policy on free school meal vouchers during lockdown. You are right up to date here on GB News. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Now it's back to the point.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point here on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Patrick Christie's. We've got a show full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussions as well on the issues you care about. So here's what's on the menu for this hour.
Yes, well, Richard Ratcliffe, the husband of Iran detainee Nazanin, has entered the 17th day of his hunger strike outside the Foreign Office in central London. Now, Mr Ratcliffe has been camped out in Whitehall protesting the continued imprisonment of his wife. We'll be talking to him, actually, very, very soon.
Yes, and we'll go head-to-head with two of our guests this morning, asking whether or not it's ever appropriate for MPs to make money from second jobs. This comes as a lobbying row continues to rage in Parliament, and of course the Prime Minister was taking questions on that yesterday. We'll be speaking about that very shortly.
We will, and also on the show, there's a shortage across the country of foster parents, apparently, with some figures showing that 3 new foster parents will be needed every single week to keep up with demand. We'll be bringing you the latest on this and the role that the pandemic may have played in all of that. Well, that's all coming up, of course, in this hour. Make sure that you get into our inbox as well, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But firstly, Mercy gives her views on rehabilitating killers. And just as a warning, apparently, there are some descriptions of violence that some people might find distressing.
A 15-year-old boy has been sentenced to life with a minimum of 17 years for luring his 12-year-old friend into woodland and then stabbing him more than 70 times. Marshal Grzeszk launched the brutal and prolonged attack on 12-year-old Bunches after the pair supposedly fell out over drugs worth £50. The pathologist who examined the victim's body said he had 22 different sites of injury across his body. And on top of injuries suggesting Grzeszk had tried to dismember Bunches, there was also evidence he tried to decapitate him. Now, Marshal Jesh is, needless to say, a troubled teen. He was kicked out of primary school for carrying a knife and then excluded from secondary school for drug dealing. Just days before the murder, he carried out a street attack and was apparently intending to set himself up as a cannabis dealer. It's not clear yet if social services were ever called upon. Now, it's obviously horrific that anyone can be capable of this unspeakable depravity. The fact he was only 14 at the time makes this harrowing crime even more shocking. But let's be clear, Gjesh will one day be out of prison and back on the streets, and I'm worried about what happens when he is, because our justice system is ineffective. More and more children are committing bodily harm, with offences of this kind having gone up 11% in the last 10 years. Knife crimes committed by children have also been on an upwards trajectory for the last 6 years. So yes, there is obviously a problem with children committing violence, but the real question is, if we accept that child killers will eventually emerge from prison still young and free to live out their lives in full, can we be sure they are transformed into people we actually want in society? I suspect the answer is no, and this is for a number of reasons. Firstly, reoffending rates for children have remained steady over the last 10 years, and the frequency of reoffending for those who do has actually gone up. Just a few weeks ago, the Parliamentary Justice Committee found mental health support in prisons to be inadequate, with psychiatric issues going untreated on a persistent basis. Prisons are also notoriously rife with gang and drug activity, exactly the sort of environment that would drive a young man with an already disturbed mind further into the abyss. And as for rehabilitation, that isn't working either. The latest annual report in the Probation Service by Her Majesty's Inspectorate reveals damning findings. It finds that probation officials consistently show a, quote, lack of professional curiosity, incorrect classification of risk, poor information sharing with prisons and police, their over-optimistic assessments of progress of offenders, and that restrictions on offenders are often prematurely relaxed. This dangerous cocktail of failures means that, as it stands, we as the public can never be sure that young, bloodthirsty killers like Gjesh will truly be reformed when they're back on our streets.
Yeah, so what's the solution then, really? Because if we're sending people into prison, and that's in some ways like a finishing school for criminals, actually, isn't it? Well, what do we actually do then?
Yeah, well, that's the problem. There's so many failures on every level. I'm not suggesting, so usually when I talk about criminal justice, my suggestion is tougher sentences.
Lock them up and throw away the key.
Yeah, essentially.
Yes.
And now, if he was an adult, that's what I would be suggesting, a whole life order. But he was 14 years old. We have to acknowledge that. Obviously, this is a very disturbed young person. It's quite an exceptional case, just to begin with. The children obviously often don't commit this kind of crime. It makes up a small proportion, murders. But if we accept that eventually these people will be let out, we can't have a probation service that is failing in that way that I just mentioned there, those damning conclusions by Her Majesty's Inspectorate. We can't have mental health services in prisons being so inadequate. That's what the Justice Committee have found in terms of mental health support in prisons. We just can't afford to have those failures, because then what happens when that person is out? They've been in prison where there's gang crime, there's knife crime, lots of issues in prison already, so often they're introduced to lots of drugs when they're already in prison. It's just a failure from start to finish, and ultimately it's society which pays the cost when that young person who comes out, he'll probably be my age when he comes out. What's he got to look forward to? He'll probably go into a life of crime and
well,
violence
yeah, absolutely.
again.
Well, he'll be trapped in this cycle, won't he? And then you've also got to look at it and go, well, actually, is he ever going to get a job? Well, I mean, who's going to employ this guy, you know? So actually, we end up paying, don't we, relentlessly. We're paying for his incarceration. He'll probably be on benefits when he gets out, probably still fall back into a life of crime. And then, here we go again, don't we? It's this never-ending cycle.
Exactly, and that's why I suspect the frequency of reoffending has actually gone up over the last decade. People who go on to offend, young people who go on to reoffend after they've been convicted, are committing more crimes, reoffending more. So clearly something is catastrophically wrong.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah. So this is from Kim, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Thank you, Kim. Anyone who kills regardless should never be allowed out of prison. That's quite a strong view, obviously. Lots of people getting in touch on this particular issue. He'll still be a young man when he gets out. That's from David. Yeah, I think this is part of the issue, isn't it? Is what do you do when they're essentially still a child? And also, what is a child? You know, how old was this guy? 15? Sorry,
he was 14 at the time.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, are you not? I mean, you're capable enough, aren't you, at that age, of knowing?
Yeah. I mean, you are, and it does feel arbitrary sometimes, doesn't it? Because I think in this country you have to be 21, for example, to get a whole life term. So that's where you never come out of prison. I mean, what's the difference between if you commit a crime when you're 21 and when you're 19? I mean, it just doesn't. It feels a bit arbitrary. So, I mean, that's the law of the land. But since it's the law of the land, we better make sure that we have, when these people come out, we have a good system in place to make sure they don't reoffend. And I'm really not convinced we have that in place.
Yes, well, I'm not either. And I think as well, like you rightly highlighted there, it's an issue when you go into prison, isn't it? If it's supposed to be a deterrent, then actually the conditions in there maybe aren't actually that much of a deterrent. Because if you are criminally minded, this particular chap sounded like he's obviously got delusions of grandeur, hasn't he, in a way? Well, I think reading between the lines, he thought that he's going to be this big hotshot drug dealer, and obviously he's got this warped, violent mentality as well. Well, if he goes in prison, he's going to be surrounded by people of exactly this, well, sometimes anyway, of exactly the same mindset. And actually, how's that going to...
Exactly, and people he'll probably look up to, because clearly that's a life he's aspiring.
Well, they might look up to him.
The fact he's 14 and wants to be a drug dealer means he's aspiring to that kind of life. So prison is clearly not the best place for him to be rehabilitated in the first place. But... you know, that's our justice system, I guess, for you.
That is indeed. Some people are calling for the return of the death penalty. We have this pretty much every time there's a crime a little bit like this, don't we? And it's certainly an issue that's not going away.
Yes, so keep your views coming in, GBViews at gbnews.uk. But now let's move on. Poland has accused its neighbour Belarus of hostile activity after having hundreds of migrants pushed to its border. The setting for this manufactured migrant crisis, that's what some are calling it, is the shared border between Poland and Belarus. And the EU has accused Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko of facilitating an influx of migrants into Poland, Lithuania and Latvia in retaliation against sanctions.
Yes, well, hundreds have already attempted to cross into Poland, but while the country has closed its borders this morning, thousands more are expected to arrive in the coming days. Well, GB News presenter Colin Brazier shows us some of the footage from this border crisis.
This side of the wire fence is EU and NATO territory. The other belongs to Belarus. The man with the shovel doesn't care whose frontier it is. He just wants to get to Western Europe, and if that means threatening a Polish border guard, so be it. Elsewhere on the 250-mile-long border, but still on the Polish side, and when people talk about hybrid warfare, this is what they mean. The Poles have guns, but the shooting that really matters here is done by smartphone. This is a propaganda war. The Belarusians, the men in balaclavas and green, are chaperoning migrants to the fence in search of weak points. They want to present what's happening here as a humanitarian crisis. At least 7 migrants may have died on this border, and present the Poles as the villains of the peace, unfeeling in the face of wailing women and children. But the Poles are having none of it. They've declared a state of emergency and brought in helicopters and 12,000 extra soldiers. Warsaw sees what's happening here as an assault on its very sovereignty. The Polish border is not just a line on a map, the country's Prime Minister said today. The border is sacred. Polish blood has been spilled for it. The Poles point out that the vast majority of the migrants are young men, including the man we saw a few moments ago who, having failed to cut the fence with a shovel, is trying again with wire cutters. Elsewhere, migrants are throwing tree trunks onto the fence, hoping to create gaps. On the other side of the border now, and these are pictures from just inside Belarusia. They were filmed by activists opposed to Alexander Lukashenko and bury any lie that this is a spontaneous mass movement of asylum seekers. There are Belarusian soldiers everywhere. They are making this happen. A passing car takes in the scale of this human tide. It instantly evokes memories of 2015 and the mass movement of more than 1 million migrants who were drawn through Eastern Europe to begin a new life in the West encouraged by an invitation from the German Chancellor. Here the migrants are chanting German, German. But where are they heading? Will they stop in Germany or push on westwards, perhaps to Britain? The Lukashenko government has tempted them here with flights to Minsk and buses to the border. The migrants want a better life. Belarus calculates that they are, in fact, human ammunition in a war where no shots are fired. What's happening here begs a very different and difficult question. If Lukashenko sees migrants as a weapon to degrade the West with, what does that say to people in Britain who argue for open borders?
Yes, well, it's interesting, isn't it, and we all think, I think, for a while the migrant crisis has gone away. What I do find fascinating is all very well and good saying, they're chanting Germany, Germany, Germany. I would be amazed to see how many of them actually really want to come here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a big proportion of them would.
Well, absolutely, yes. Well, look, let's go into the inbox, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Hopefully very shortly, by the way, just to fill you in, we are going to go to Richard Ratcliffe. We're just waiting for him outside the Foreign Office at the minute. He's on hunger strike, of course. We're just waiting to get him all mic'd up, apparently. But there we go, yeah. So lots of you getting in touch about the issue of animal cruelty in this country, saying that actually this is really bad, basically, and if you kick a horse, you should go to prison. That's Yvonne's view.
I think it's a bit strong, but you should certainly, you should have a strong.
Well, just don't kick a horse, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
really,
don't do it. This is, of course, videos emerged of a woman.
Yeah, sorry, I just thought I probably should fill people in as to why exactly kicking a horse is an issue. In case you are just joining us, a woman who was hunting has been filmed kicking a horse. It's not just a random view from Yvonne there.
Yeah, exactly. And so Patrick did his monologue on this, saying that they should have harsher sentences, and things like pet napping should actually have the same sentence penalty as kidnapping.
Yes, well, there you go. I mean, look, the way I look at it is that if you do nick a family pet, then you are nicking a member of the family, aren't you, really? I don't think a lot of us view pets as just animals. I think they are, when, especially if you've had them for years and years, of course, they are a member of your family, aren't they? So I think if you steal one, then you should do hard time, basically.
Yes, well, keep your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. And after the break, we'll be going head-to-head with two guests on the question of whether MPs should be allowed to take and make money from second jobs. Stay with us for that. We'll also be live outside the Foreign Office with Richard Ratcliffe, of course, husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. So stay with us for that as well.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, Richard Ratcliffe, the husband of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, has said he is in uncharted territory as he enters the 17th day of his hunger strike. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe has been in custody in Iran since 2016, when she was accused of plotting to overthrow the government. And yesterday, her husband, Richard Ratcliffe, was joined at his hunger strike by Victoria Coren-Mitchell and Claudia Winkleman. And the Foreign Office has said that they are doing all they can to help Nazanin get home.
Well, we can actually go live now and talk to Richard, who joins us. There he is. Thank you very much. First and foremost, Richard, how are you?
Morning. Yeah, I'm feeling quite tired at this stage. As you say, this is uncharted territory. This is now day 17 of the hunger strike. Yeah, I'm feeling its length now. As you see, I'm sitting down. Not much energy to walk around. Still in good spirits. We've had lots of lovely people come down, as you mentioned. We had Claudia Winkleman and Victoria Coren-Mitchell yesterday, a number of politicians, and just lots of lovely people. Very good for lifting spirits. But yeah, not eating for this long does take its toll.
Have you had any response whatsoever from the government yet about this?
So not directly, not since the very beginning. In fact, though, yesterday there was some positive movement. So yesterday Liz Truss, the current Foreign Secretary, spoke to the Iranian Foreign Minister. And as a result of that phone call, the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister is coming to London on Thursday to talk about Nazanin's case and nuclear stuff. So it feels like at least it's provoking some movement. It felt like things were moving at glacial pace for a long time. So I'm glad that there is finally some traction.
And it's great news that you feel there has been some traction, of course. I mean, what do you want to see? How long are you planning to stay out here, and what will be sort of decisive action for you? Of course, the end goal is getting Nazanin home, but what would you like to see sort of in the short term on the part of the government, both Iran and British government?
Well, so you're right. Actually, a hunger strike's a short-term tactic, and you have to listen to your body at some point. And my body is beginning to creak. So I don't think we'll be doing this for weeks and weeks. I think it's days and days at this point. In terms of demands, I chased the Foreign Office yesterday. I said, listen, you've got the 4 demands. You know what I've asked for. They're all things you can do. Are you going to say yes? Are you going to say no? Or are you just going to give no answer and hope that I stop at some point? I think the 2 points remain the same. Nazanin and others are being held over the UK government's debt. They need to resolve that debt dispute so that people can come home. And they really do need to challenge Iran on its hostage taking. It doesn't make it safe to British citizens to do neither on both things.
How is Nazanin? Do you speak to her at all regularly or at all, I suppose, really?
Yeah, no. At the moment, she's not been brought back into prison. She's still waiting that phone call. So at the moment, she's still at her mum's, and I spoke to her yesterday. Probably as the day's gone on, less worried about prison, more worried about her husband, and particularly she'll check the weather online to see how it is. Want reassurance in the morning that I was okay, got through the night. Yeah, it's obviously a long time. It puts a strain on her, but on all the family. There's an edge to a hunger strike. It can be a stressful thing.
It's not too distressing for you, I suppose, really. Can I just ask, because it's been a heck of a long time, hasn't it, now that this issue has been rumbling on for. What do you miss most about Nazanin? What are the things that you miss most?
I think I just look forward to being normal again. So just us being a normal couple. Obviously not with a 1.5-year-old now with a 7-year-old, but just going around the neighbourhood. Doing things on a Saturday, the normal life of sitting having cups of tea together. That's what was taken away from us, and I look forward to the point when that happens again.
And look, obviously Boris Johnson is now at the tiller, as it were, of this country, and I understand that he's not exactly done Nazanin many favours in the past, has he? I think he made a couple of quite blundering remarks in the past that certainly did no favours for her whatsoever. I take it you've got very little faith that Boris Johnson will actually do anything about this or even want to do anything about this?
Look, he's the Prime Minister. He's responsible for all of our safety. He's responsible for protecting all British citizens. I think my point to him is, he needs to take that responsibility seriously. You're right, he was associated very closely with Nazanin's case once upon a time, has kept his distance a bit more recently, but, he doesn't can't walk away from that responsibility. He made promises to bring her home. He made promises to settle that debt. Iran remembers those promises, and he needs to keep them.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. I know you must be completely exhausted, so really appreciate your time. And we wish you all the best, of course, as well.
Thank you for covering us. Thank you.
Yes, good luck indeed. Well, let's go to some of your views now. GB Views at GBnews.uk. It's still kicking off very much about the animal cruelty issue that I raised earlier after a lady was filmed, primary school teacher, believe it or not, was actually filmed kicking and then slapping a horse around the face. Anyone found guilty of cruelty to animals should be hung, and that's according to Richard. I mean, that's... It's an option. It's an option, of course. Not necessarily the right one, but yes, a lot of people getting in touch about that. And yeah, harsh sentences, long overdue for those who cause harm to animals. Essentially, a lot of you in agreement, although someone whose name escapes me now because it was further down in my inbox did tell me to keep out of rural issues, called me a townie and said I have no right to say that we should ban trail hunting.
Well,
fair enough.
We like a range of views.
We like a range of views, and hey, that's all right. We don't all have to agree.
Yes, indeed.
If you want to slaughter a fox, that's fine. Anyway, right.
Why do you keep your range of views coming in? GB Views at gbnews.uk. But now, moving on to that big story that's been taking up the headlines over the last few days. MPs gathered in the Commons yesterday evening to debate parliamentary standards, and this comes after MP Owen Paterson resigned after sleaze allegations. As it was revealed, he made over £8,000 a month as a consultant for Randox Health. Prime Minister Boris Johnson actually failed to show up yesterday, but in the questioning, I said Boris Johnson was taking questions earlier. Actually, he wasn't. It was Stephen Barclay. And he's been accused of hypocrisy by Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. And The Independent reports Sir Geoffrey Cox earns £400,000 a year outside Westminster, whilst Guido Fawkes claims Starmer, Ian Blackford and Sir Ed Davey are also making money from side hustles.
Side hustles. It makes them sound like they've got like Al Capone or something, doesn't it? But anyway, this does beg the question, just how many other MPs are at it? And should this be allowed? Well, joining us now for our head-to-head is John McDonald, Director of Strategy at the Adam Smith Institute. We're also joined by Steve Pound, former Labour MP for Ealing North. Now, both of you, I hope you know the drill, it's at least been explained to you. You get 60 seconds each, uninterrupted initially, to state your case, and then we get stuck into the wider debate. So let's go to Steve Pound first, I believe. Look, your 60 seconds starts now. Should MPs be allowed to do this?
Absolutely not. Look, being an MP is a full-time job. You get a decent wage, you get 81 grand a year. That's good enough. But we're overcomplicating this. There are people who are doctors, there are people who are cab drivers, people who need to keep up their professional qualifications. That's a different matter. The people who write books even. You can do other things as an MP. What you cannot do, what you must not do, and what you should not be allowed to do is to be a lobbyist for some company that's bidding for government contracts. The minute you start trailing a coat through that slough of mud, then quite frankly, you're bringing Parliament into disrepute. Outside jobs by all means, but not outside lobbying jobs.
You're well within your time. You had 20 seconds still to state your case there, but you've done it so succinctly. Well, John, over to you now. 60 seconds starts now. Should MPs be allowed to do this?
Well, sure. Look, I agree with Stephen that £80,000 a year is a lot of money, far more than the vast majority of people that MPs represent are paid. And so I appreciate that people don't like it when Owen Paterson profits £8,000 a month outside of that. And I think we'll both agree that the situation was handled very poorly, and it reflects a government lacking in both good judgment and competence. But we shouldn't conflate that lack of propriety here with it being morally or professionally wrong for MPs to have second jobs or to be paid more than their constituents. And I think we talk so much about how Westminster is a bubble, that MPs are increasingly divorced from the lives of their constituents or lack relevant work and life experience to do their job properly. I think preventing them from taking up second jobs would only lead to MPs being even further disconnected.
OK, also well within your time. Goodness me, very efficient, both of you, I must say. Steve, look, I suppose one of the arguments would be if we ban MPs from doing this kind of stuff, then why would people become an MP? A lot of these people, if we want to attract the best, could just go and line their pockets in the city, couldn't they?
Well, let them clear off and line their pockets in the city, and don't try to debase British politics even further. You know, not that it's not a very, very high bar at the present time. Look, if you want to make money, go and make money. I've got no problem with that. You know, I'm intensely relaxed, as Peter Mandelson used to say. But What I do object to is somebody who is on the one hand claiming to represent 70 or 80,000 constituents, and on the other hand claiming that they can actually get £500,000 over 3 or 4 years, demonstrably not doing their job. And John's makes an important point about access, being outside the bubble. Well, frankly, if you're doing your job properly, you should be in your constituency. You should be out of the bubble. Anyone who locks themselves away in the gilded corridors of Westminster, in the caliginosity of that, sort of dark building, then they are out of touch. Get into your patch. Get involved in your local communities. Do the things that an MP should be doing. Don't fill your boots, and above all, don't go and see ministers and say a mate of mine would
Stephen,
like a
can I just get some clarity? Do you make a distinction between sort of jobs that are in consulting and lobbying, etc., and something like Theresa May? So the Sun is reporting that Theresa May earned £760 from after dinner speeches, for example.
£760.
Sorry, £760,000.
Oh, I was going to say we could get.
That would be a very low
my 30th.
After dinner speeches. So do you make a distinction between the types of jobs and the way they're actually making money, or do you just want a sort of blanket ban?
No. I don't go down that route anymore. Look, I mean, when you say Theresa May earned it, I'm not entirely sure earned is the right word. I mean, she certainly received an enormous amount of money. Look, there's people like Dr. Dan Bolter, people like Dr. Alan Khan. They're doctors and they're carrying on working because if they didn't, they'd actually lose their professional qualification. So I am differentiating. After dinner speeches, fine, by all means, it's part of the job. But the minute you go and work for a company that has an interest in government contracts, frankly, you should be out and you should not be doing it, and you're not fit to be an MP.
Yeah. All right. And John, what do you say to that?
Look, I believe that MPs should absolutely be motivated primarily by wanting to represent their constituents and enact positive change. And so I agree with Steve that they should be in their patch, as it were. But the reality is that many have to take a huge pay cut to do that job. I think the average cut from the 2010 intake was around £30,000 a year. And it means what we end up with are MPs who have inherited wealth, who can afford to take such a cut, to go out and take on the expensive job of campaigning to become an MP. And I think by not allowing MPs, second jobs, although I think Stephen has provided a much more nuanced case than perhaps expected, would be forcing a sort of a quasi-religious vow of dedication on them. You'd ask them to sort of sacrifice their material conditions and their previous interests to dedicate themselves to the work of being an MP, which sometimes could rule out enthusiastic
Should we just pay them more then, John?
People.
Should we just pay them more then? Because then that way, they don't necessarily have to go and get another job. You also can maybe still attract some of the best and the brightest, as it were, who could go and generate wealth elsewhere if they wanted to. Should we raise MP salaries?
I mean, there's certainly an argument to be made for that, but I don't see why, in most cases, they couldn't kind of make up the difference by carrying on with an existing job that they have.
What about...
I'm sorry, I think there's two aspects to this, quite honestly. The one is the MP filling his or her boot. The other one, which is equally disgraceful in many ways, is this business about political parties. I mean, it's an extraordinary coincidence that every treasurer of the Conservative Party for the last 20-odd years has ended up in the House of Lords. Obviously, it's a complete coincidence. But there is an issue there, and I think we could address that by what's called short money, where political parties actually get money for secretarial support, and you don't have to go having these dodgy black-tie dinners and picking up your £3 million here and there. So that's one issue, and I think with that comes the question of the House of Lords. Do we actually need 800 people in the House of Lords, the second biggest legislature in the world after I think it's a Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. So do we actually need that? But when it comes to individual MPs, perfectly simple. Second jobs, by all means, subject to investigation and approval by an independent body of 3 or 5 people, randomly selected maybe from the public, because we all know if it looks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, it probably is a duck. If you're working for a company that's got government contracts in mind, then you are getting weighed off, and you should not be. You should be laid off.
Absolutely. Well, if it looks like a duck, we're probably paying for its Duck Pond house, aren't we, if history is anything to go by. Well, John McDonnell, thank you very much, Director of Strategy at the Adam Smith Institute. And as well, there you go, Steve Pound as well, former Labour MP for Ealing North. Good head-to-head, that, I think.
Yes. I think very sensible solutions. I don't see why an independent sort of panel to decide whether it's appropriate or not would be a bad idea.
Yeah, just don't break the rules, but I mean, that's wishful thinking, isn't it, I suppose?
Perhaps, yes. Well, after the break, we'll be talking about the £295,000 of taxpayers' money that has been given to the publisher of a book of Nicola Sturgeon's speeches. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. The government will reportedly announce compulsory COVID vaccines for frontline NHS staff in England. It's understood employees will be given a spring deadline for both doses. Around 100,000 NHS workers haven't had yet their first jab. The Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to apologise for the Tory sleaze row. Boris Johnson, who visited Northumberland yesterday, reportedly returned to London before a debate in the Commons had finished, but decided not to take part. Cabinet Minister Steve Barclay told MPs attempting to change standards rules to prevent Owen Paterson from being suspended was a mistake. Tensions are rising on the Poland-Belarus border, where thousands of migrants are gathering. It comes a day after hundreds of people broke through barriers and entered Poland. Polish security forces described the influx of migrants as a coordinated attempt to massively enter the territory, accusing the Belarusian government of launching hybrid attacks against the country. England and Manchester United striker Marcus Rashford will be awarded an MBE by the Duke of Cambridge. The 24-year-old is being recognised for his campaign last summer to ensure no vulnerable children went hungry. It resulted in the government changing its policy on free school meal vouchers during lockdown. You are up to date. I'll have more on today's main stories for you in half an hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints, over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Patrick Christie's here for GB News, back out and about. Now, I want to know how people feel about a potential GP strike. We're seeing record waiting lists. We've got issues when it comes to various things like cancer treatments. We've got issues when it comes to mental health and, of course, dementia care as well. So are people actually willing to tolerate a GP strike? Let's find out.
I would support them going on strike, actually.
Really? Even with things like, waiting times and cancer care lists and this kind of the other?
Obviously, it would affect a lot of people, but you need to do something quite drastic to have a change.
No.
Why not?
Well, you can never get hold of a bloody doctor in the first place. I actually rang a couple of months ago 41 times to my local GP in Cuffrey and couldn't get through.
No.
Why not?
We struggle getting to see a doctor. It's hard enough as it is, getting past the receptionist.
Would I support them going on strike? Probably not.
Why not? It doesn't matter what your views are, we take all comers. It's not a grilling.
GPs, need to get their act together and get back to work.
What are they going on strike for?
They don't want to be held to account for the number of face-to-face appointments they're doing.
And I can't understand why you can't see a GP. I just like to know what they're actually doing.
The district nurses are all going out doing their visits. Why can't GPs?
What are they striking for? I haven't seen a doctor in 3 years.
They're striking because they don't want to be held to account for the amount of face-to-face appointments they're doing.
You could have face-to-face appointments that are safe. If I go in a Costa Coffee, they have a plastic screen, and you order through a plastic screen. It's important you see a doctor face to face. I don't see what the problem is.
I just think they should get back to work and do what they're there for in the first place. The definition of being a GP was working with the public, wasn't it? That's what they train for, but they don't do that anymore, do they? So they're not doing their jobs. They just want to. So I couldn't even get on the phone to a doctor when I was ill a while back.
One of the reasons why they're threatening to strike, it's not about money, apparently. It's about the idea the government might want to publish a league table to see how many of them are seeing people face to face. Would you back that plan from the government to publish that league table?
Yeah, it's probably one of the good things the government's actually doing, yes, so I would back it.
And you don't think that telephone appointments or virtual appointments are as good as face to face?
No.
Why not?
Because I think you need to physically see a doctor. I manage a care home, and even during COVID, we were doing WhatsApp video message calls. Yeah.
People getting misdiagnosed?
Yeah.
Well, there we have it. The vast majority of the public that I spoke to today, anyway, are certainly not in favour of a GP strike. How many people there, in that just snapshot of the public, said they couldn't get an appointment, they were waiting for an appointment, they didn't think it was right that GPs might, at this particular moment in time, go on strike? It's devastating stuff. Maybe we should post this to the BMA.
Well, maybe we should. I mean, that's astonishing, really. I mean, almost every single person that I stopped and spoke to, and we had to cut that down because I spoke to quite a few more people as well, had a story of a current situation, a very current situation where they can't go and see their GP, or one of their relatives can't, or they've been waiting ages for treatment, and this, that and the other. And that's just a snapshot of the public. I mean, this is obviously happening to pretty much every family up and down the country, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, I do feel very sorry for people who, you know, through no fault of their own, are having to be engaging with the NHS at the moment, whether it's because they're ill, whether their family members are ill, because I have heard stories as well. I'm sure lots of people have stories of things just taking so long, really important things, whether it's diagnoses, whether it's getting results back on particular things. It's quite dire at the moment, and I think, you know, those of us who don't currently have to be engaging with the NHS at the moment should sort of count ourselves lucky.
Yeah, indeed. Well, look, you know, obviously it's not every single GP that wants to go on strike, far from it, but if the British Medical Association is balloting for it, which they are, it's interesting actually, because I read a report over the weekend and the BMA was able to send out and post out ballots to pretty much every GP's surgery and make sure that they send follow-up emails and say, please vote in this. If they applied the same approach to treating people, then I think they'd be very good at their job. But actually, when it comes to strike action, they seem ruthlessly efficient. Just seems strange to me, that. Seems strange to me. Maybe they need to pull their finger out. Anyway.
Well, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk, and we'll be getting to those throughout the show. But now, moving on to another story. Fostering provides children who cannot live with their own families for whatever reason with alternative care, where they can benefit from a loving, safe and stable home. But there is currently a shortage of foster parents across Britain. Fostering Network estimates 8,600 new foster carers are actually needed across the UK this year alone.
Yes, well, in England, local authorities have been encouraging people to come forward to foster to meet this demand. One council in West Yorkshire has recently launched a campaign to break down barriers associated with fostering. Well, our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley has the story for us.
The number of children needing foster placements across the UK continues to rise, and to meet this national demand, local authorities across the country have been encouraging residents to consider becoming foster parents. In West Yorkshire, Wakefield Council have launched a campaign to highlight the reality of fostering on family life, in the hope of showing that fostering involves the same experiences and emotions as other family types. And foster carers in the region are supporting this strategy, that fostering provides an expansion that's positive to family life, whilst making a real difference to the lives of children by providing them with a caring, safe and stable environment.
We've never looked back, have we? No. I've always said it's the most challenging job you'll ever do, but it's the most rewarding, without a doubt.
Yeah, you've got to, you know, it's not all wine and roses. There are tough times, but like Julie says, there's a lot of rewards out of it, and to see how the children you've looked after have developed and grown in confidence, in the social skills, absolutely massive. It's wonderful.
Yeah, they're brilliant at it. And we get a lot of support from a supervising social worker as well. So, you know, if you are wanting to foster, you've always got the support of your supervising social worker and your children's social workers.
It's just like any family. It has its ups and downs, it has its stresses, it has its joy, it has its achievements. It is just family.
It's just, yeah, just like normal family, everyday family.
Funded by the Department for Education, Wakefield was chosen as one of only 8 local authorities to pilot the Mockingbird model. This brings together 6 to 8 foster families to work with an experienced foster carer who acts as a mentor, giving carers a bigger support network to turn to during difficult times. A scheme that Kevin and Julie are part of.
The ethos of the Mockingbird is one of the extended family, the nuclear family. So it's about supporting each other. It's about socialising. It's about training together and just building that family ethos. You know, and it really is working really well. And the most positive thing that you can say about Mockingbird is the relationships between the young people, between the adults, and you can see them relationship. And we have done over the last year, especially when you think about lockdown and how restrictive that was, how them relationships have grown and developed, and it's really, really lovely to see.
Anyone over the age of 21 can foster, and it doesn't matter if you've never fostered before. Councils like the one in Wakefield are there to provide support through every step of the foster journey.
We don't want to put barriers up by saying that you have to have this qualification, you have to have that qualification, you have to have experience. All you need really is the ability to look after children, to care for them, to give them that love and support that they need. We can help it, we'll help you all the way. We'll give you extra support, we'll make sure that you can do the job. All children deserve to be happy. They deserve to have a stable home environment. And that's what we're trying to do here in Wakefield. And it's up to our foster carers, because they're heroes. To me, they're heroes. They're doing a difficult job, but they're doing it with love. And they're doing it, well, I think they get such a lot out of it as well if you speak to foster carers.
The council here are hoping that the momentum of this campaign will continue and that people in the district will come forward to be foster carers and help children that are in need. Anna Riley in Wakefield for GB News.
Well, we're now joined by 2 experts in this field, Andy Alvin, the CEO of fostering charity, the Adolescents and Children's Trust, and as well Helen Dyson, a foster carer. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Really important issue, of course. Let's start with you, Andy. How have the goalposts moved from becoming a foster parent since the pandemic? I mean, is it more difficult? Have you found it's exacerbated all the problems in terms of getting people to foster?
No, on the contrary, actually. What we've seen is the pandemic has caused a lot of people to rethink what they're doing with their lives. And of course, an awful lot of people have also sadly lost their jobs through the pandemic. And foster care and foster carers continued in their role throughout the pandemic. You know, it was one of those roles that was pandemic proof. And they were absolutely fantastic. They stepped up. Obviously, they had the children at home for most of the time during the school lockdowns. And foster carers did an absolutely wonderful job. So thankfully, we're seeing more people at the moment thinking about fostering and getting in touch with TACT and with their local authorities to talk about becoming a foster carer. So it is a good time to think of becoming a foster carer. But in terms of the shortages, what we're really looking for is foster carers who want to look after older teenagers, who want to look after children aged 14 to 18, and also for foster carers who can take sibling groups. And as the report was saying, it's not about qualifications or necessarily experience. It's about having room in your heart and room in your home to take in a child.
And can I just ask, because it's something you alluded to there, you're struggling sometimes to get foster carers for particular groups of children. Do you think there is a misconception, perhaps, or an idea that actually it's very difficult to foster some groups of children, particularly children who come from broken homes, which is sort of, or all children, I suppose, who need fostering, or a huge proportion. Is that what leads people to perhaps not want to foster certain groups?
I think you're right. I think there is a misapprehension that fostering teenagers can be more challenging than fostering younger children. But in reality, with younger children, you know, the under nines, then you're on more of the time. You have to be active in your care of the child because the child needs you, you know, most of the time. With teenagers, there's a lot of self-care and a lot of time when you won't be interacting with the child and the child will not want you around. But occasionally, as with all teenagers, and it's not just teenagers in foster care, there are some parts of the week that become quite heightened. But you have support, you have training, and you have your supervising social worker there. And in organisations like TACT, you have a 24/7 support line as well. So no matter when an issue arrives, you've got support.
OK. Helen, I'd just like to bring you in here, really. I think for anyone who's watching this now who may be considering fostering, I mean, you obviously are a foster carer. Could you just talk to me about your personal experience, really, how you maybe first started doing it and some of the experiences you've had since?
OK, well, I've been fostering with Team Fostering for 12 years, and I've had various children stay with me, and it's really the most amazing thing to see children flourish. So I had a young man who came to me, he'd never been abroad, didn't have a passport, and when he left me, he actually went to study in Shanghai and came back and got a degree in Chinese studies. And sometimes looking after children, it can be the small things, it can be a child being invited to a birthday party for the first time, it can be a child who has the confidence that and actually show their work that they haven't been able to do before. It's not always easy, and there are times when actually you do need help and support, and it's really important for foster carers to really look at, you know, what support they have in their family, but also when choosing who to go and foster for, because I mean, when I started, I didn't realise that you actually do have a choice. That you actually look at the support and help that the agencies or local authorities give you. But it's one of those things where it changes your life, but you're actually changing children's lives. And I mean, people say, you know, how do you say goodbye to them? Quite often you don't. They stay in touch with you forever because they are part of your family.
So you'd obviously recommend it, that's right. So if people are really thinking about getting into this now, then how do they go about it? Let's give some people some advice. I'm getting a lot of emails in from people on this very issue, actually, saying that they are quite keen to do it and they've thought about doing it for a long time. So Helen, how do we, you know, make those first steps?
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is really to research. So because you can foster for local authorities, so wherever you're living. But then there's independent fostering agencies. So I'm with Team Fostering, which is a not-for-profit agency. But there's lots and lots of IFAs, independent fostering agencies out there. Look at the Ofsted reports, speak to people who actually care for them. There's information events for the local authorities and IFAs where you can actually go and talk. Think about what sort of age groups, children as well, that would fit you and your family circumstances. And you don't just have to go and talk to one person, you know, to one IFA or local authority. I would talk to lots and then choose which one really is the best fit for you.
We have a CEO of a fostering charity who can perhaps give us some advice on how somebody might go about trying to figure out where to start and which one will be the best one for them if they're considering fostering.
Helen makes an excellent point. There are not-for-profit IFAs and charitable ones like TACT and Team Fostering, and there are your local authority, and we do really encourage people to look at fostering for either their local authority or a not-for-profit or a charity. Sadly, we are a sector where there are fostering agencies that are owned by private equity companies and private equity houses. The holding companies for these entities are offshore, so they don't pay UK tax, yet they're very happy to take UK taxpayers' money to pay for the fostering. So look behind the scenes at who you're asking to foster for, and choose a not-for-profit, choose a local authority, because then you know that all the money is going to the child, all the money is going into the household, and that's really important for most foster carers. But obviously, the private equity firms don't advertise that they're private equity firms when they're asking for foster carers, so you do need to do a bit of research. But don't rule yourself out, is the big rule. A lot of people think, oh, I'm too young, I'm only in my early 20s, or I'm 65, so I'm too old. Neither of those things are true. We absolutely want to hear from you because there's a fostering role for you at either of those agencies. Doesn't matter if you own your own home or you rent, you can still foster. It doesn't matter what sort of background you come from, you can still foster, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're straight, you're gay, it really doesn't matter. We want you to come forward and foster. We've got fostering families of all types of different sorts, all types of shapes and sizes, and they're all wonderful. So don't rule yourself out from fostering. Give one of our agencies a ring and just have a chat and see what it's like for you. You'll go through a process. It's not that you ring us today and you're fostering next Monday. It's not how it happens. There'll be a long assessment, there'll be training, you'll get lots of support, you'll be well prepared for this, and your fellow foster carers will buddy you and will support you into your fostering role. So you will never be alone with it, and you'll always have support and advice to turn to. And it is transformative. It can be one of the most transformative things you ever do. There is no role like it in the UK.
OK, thank you very much, both of you. Andy Elvin there, the CEO of fostering charity, the Adolescent and Children's Trust, and the wonderful Helen Dyson, who's a foster carer from the agency Team Fostering as well. So, look, I mean, it's thought-provoking stuff, actually. I have wondered in the past about whether or not it's something that I would consider doing, really, but I suppose time will tell. Anyway, keep all your thoughts coming in to us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, hello, good morning. You're watching To The Point here on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki, and we're here all the way through until midday with, as ever, a show stacked full of the best stories and the best guests.
Yes, so please get in touch with us as you have been already, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll get to your views throughout the rest of the hour. But first, let's give you the latest news with Rosie.
Thanks both. It's 11 o'clock. Let's get you up to date. The government will reportedly announce compulsory COVID vaccines for frontline NHS staff in England. It's understood employees will be given a spring deadline for both doses. Around 100,000 NHS workers haven't had their first jab. Care home workers in England have already been told they must be fully vaccinated by this Thursday. The Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to apologise for the Tory sleaze row. Boris Johnson, who visited Northumberland yesterday, reportedly returned to London before a debate in the Commons had finished, but decided not to take part. Cabinet Minister Steve Barclay told MPs attempting to change standards rules to prevent Owen Paterson from being suspended was a mistake. Labour's Shadow Community Secretary Steve Reid told GB News the PM needs to address it.
My message to Boris Johnson is apologise for what you've done wrong and work with us to put it right again. This is something that could bring the whole of the House of Commons together. The vast majority of us want a system that the public can have confidence in. It's the Prime Minister whose disregard for the rules is poisoning the well right now, and we really need to come together to put this right.
The husband of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe has said he's in uncharted territory as he enters the 17th day of his hunger strike. Richard Ratcliffe wants the government to do more to secure the release of his wife, who's been detained in Iran for 5 years. The Foreign Office says it's doing all it can to get her home. Mr Ratcliffe told GB News the Prime Minister has to make good on his promise to bring her back.
Nazanin and others are being held over the UK government's debt. They need to resolve that debt dispute so that people can come home. And they really do need to challenge Iran on its hostage-taking. It doesn't make it safe to British citizens to do neither on both things. Exactly, he's the Prime Minister. He's responsible for all of our safety. He's responsible for protecting all British citizens. I think my point to him is, he needs to take that responsibility seriously.
A man who spent more than 2 days trapped in a cave is said to be doing remarkably well. The experienced caver was in the Brecon Beacons when he fell on Saturday, suffering what's thought to be a broken jaw, leg and spinal injuries. His ordeal lasted 54 hours as teams worked in shifts to try to bring him to the surface. More than 240 people were involved in the operation. Tensions are rising on the Poland-Belarus border where thousands of migrants are gathering. It comes a day after hundreds of people broke through barriers and entered Poland. Polish security forces described the influx of migrants as a coordinated attempt to massively enter the territory, accusing the Belarusian government of launching hybrid attacks against the country. As we've just been seeing, the government will invest more than £200 million into small nuclear reactor research as part of plans to hit net zero targets. The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, described it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move away from reliance on fossil fuels. The small modular reactors could be ready by the early 2030s and have the potential to be less expensive to build than traditional nuclear power plants. England and Manchester United striker Marcus Rashford will be awarded an MBE by the Duke of Cambridge. The 24-year-old is being recognised for his campaign last summer to ensure no vulnerable children went hungry. It resulted in the government changing its policy on free school meal vouchers during lockdown. Thousands of ceramic poppies are going on display at the Imperial War Museum in Trafford near Manchester. The new artwork will comprise of thousands of handcrafted ceramic poppies cascading 30 metres down and pooling within unique architecture of the Air Shard. It's going to be displayed from the 10th of November, just before Armistice Day, as part of remembrance events. You are up to date. I'll be back with the latest headlines in half an hour. Now, though, back to the point.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching To The Point here on GB News with Patrick Christie's and Mercy Miroki. We've got a show full of all of today's biggest stories and those discussion topics to get you going.
Yes, so here's what's on the menu. Poland and other EU countries have accused Belarus of trying to provoke a new refugee crisis in Europe as retaliation for their criticism of Alexander Lukashenko's crackdown on opposition. We'll bring you the latest on this developing situation.
Yes, soldiers and officers are also set to receive sexual consent training under plans from the head of the Army and the Defence Secretary to end inappropriate behaviour towards women. We'll talk about what this new training could look like and the problems it's trying to tackle.
Yes, and a woman has been filmed at a hunt in Rutland kicking and slapping a horse. And anti-hunting animal welfare campaigners have condemned the woman, and we'll show you the footage. Well, there it is. There, actually.
What an absolute scumbag.
Patrick did his monologue on this a bit earlier. We've been getting your thoughts, and we'll carry on getting your thoughts on what you think an appropriate penalty is for that kind of behaviour.
She's a primary school teacher.
Yes, she's a primary school teacher, so that's additionally worrying. That's all coming up on our show today over the next hour. And get in touch with your views, as usual, GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Well, let's start this final hour with a worrying situation developing in Eastern Europe. So Poland has accused its neighbour Belarus of hostile activity after having hundreds of migrants pushed to its borders.
Yes, the setting for this manufactured migrant crisis, that's what some are calling it, is the shared border between Poland and Belarus. And the EU has accused Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko of facilitating an influx of migrants into Poland, Lithuania and Latvia in retaliation against sanctions.
Yes, well, hundreds have already attempted to cross into Poland, but while the country has closed its borders this morning, thousands more are expected to arrive in the coming days. GBNews presenter Colin Brazier shows us some of the footage of the border crisis.
This side of the wire fence is EU and NATO territory. The other belongs to Belarus. The man with the shovel doesn't care whose frontier it is. He just wants to get to Western Europe, and if that means threatening a Polish border guard, so be it. Elsewhere on the 250-mile-long border, but still on the Polish side, and when people talk about hybrid warfare, this is what they mean. The Poles have guns, but the shooting that really matters here is done by smartphone. This is a propaganda war. The Belarusians, the men in balaclavas and green, are chaperoning migrants to the fence in search of weak points. They want to present what's happening here as a humanitarian crisis. At least 7 migrants may have died on this border, and present the Poles as the villains of the peace, unfeeling in the face of wailing women and children. But the Poles are having none of it. They've declared a state of emergency and brought in helicopters and 12,000 extra soldiers. Warsaw sees what's happening here as an assault on its very sovereignty. The Polish border is not just a line on a map, the country's Prime Minister said today. The border is sacred. Polish blood has been spilled for it. The Poles point out that the vast majority of the migrants are young men, including the man we saw a few moments ago who, having failed to cut the fence with a shovel, is trying again with wire cutters. Elsewhere, migrants are throwing tree trunks onto the fence, hoping to create gaps. On the other side of the border now, and these are pictures from just inside Belarusia. They were filmed by activists opposed to Alexander Lukashenko and bury any lie that this is a spontaneous mass movement of asylum seekers. There are Belarusian soldiers everywhere. They are making this happen. A passing car takes in the scale of this human tide. It instantly evokes memories of 2015 and the mass movement of more than 1 million migrants who were drawn through Eastern Europe to begin a new life in the West, encouraged by an invitation from the German Chancellor. German! Here the migrants are chanting German, German. But where are they heading? Will they stop in Germany or push on westwards, perhaps to Britain? The Lukashenko government has tempted them here with flights to Minsk and buses to the border. The migrants want a better life. Belarus calculates that they are, in fact, human ammunition in a war where no shots are fired. What's happening here begs a very different and difficult question. If Lukashenko sees migrants as a weapon to degrade the West with, what does that say to people in Britain who argue for open borders?
Yes, Colin Brazier with that report there. Now, our home and security editor, Mark White, joins us now. Thank you very much, Mark. Now, it looks like it's far away at the moment, doesn't it, this issue? It looks like it's a distant crisis, as it were. But actually, is this coming our way, do you think?
Well, very probably some of them, at least. We know from previous migrant incursions into the European Union that a number will head to the northwest coast of France with a view to trying to get over to the UK. We're seeing that manifesting itself currently across the coastline from Calais to Dunkirk down to Boulogne, with thousands who are gathering there, even at this time of year, trying to get across the Channel, and they're still doing it. There was more boats that came across the Channel today. So while it might be easy to think, well, this is an issue that concerns Poland and Lithuania and Latvia, their dispute with Belarus, why should we care? Well, the truth of it is that some, at least, will make their way through into the European Union and down towards the UK. Now, in terms of what is happening there on the border with Belarus and Poland today, we know that the Polish Prime Minister and his Defence Minister have gone to that border post that is seeing this very significant gathering of about 3,000 to 4,000 migrants at the moment, with more on the way. There have been, you can see these are shots from yesterday actually, where they were felling trees and tree branches and using them to try to flatten that razor wire there with a view to getting over. And the Polish authorities responding with pepper spray, CS spray and alike to try and push them back. Of course, for the migrants who are there, they're getting increasingly desperate because they've been hoodwinked by the Lukashenko government into coming over. Get a short 7-day visa, we'll fly you over. You have to pay for the privilege, of course, about £3,500. You fly over from third-party airlines, usually from Iraq, from Syria, from other countries in the Middle East, across to Minsk. You're put up in a hotel for a few days, then you're bussed down to the border. This has been rumbling on for a few months. Thousands have already crossed. What's happened now, it's come to a head because Poland has said they've had enough. They've put razor wire along the border. They're stopping all migrants from coming through this route. And of course the Belarusians allowing them in are not then allowing them back into Belarus. So they're gathered in this no man's land, becoming increasingly desperate and angry and trying to cross that border. I should say this morning we've heard shots fired. Disputes as to whether this is from the Belarusian side or indeed from the Polish side, but you can very clearly hear the gunfire if you listen to this clip.
Wow.
So no reports yet of any injuries, but in terms of deaths related to the sort of exposure and the conditions out there, we know that some 8 migrants have died, according to Polish authorities, that have died in the woods around there. It was -1 yesterday. So the people there are obviously becoming increasingly desperate and increasingly angry, and they want to push their way through and into the European Union. But the Polish authorities are equally adamant that they're not going to allow them to do that. So it's difficult to see how this is going to do anything other than escalate into a potential conflict.
And what have the European Union said about this?
Well, the European Union is fully behind Poland in the sense that it supports its right to defend its borders. The European Union, the European Commission, NATO, and lots of countries within the European Union and within NATO have accused Belarus, in particular Alexander Lukashenko, its autocrat president, of orchestrating this crisis in revenge for the sanctions that the European Union, the UK and the US slapped on Lukashenko after the disputed presidential elections last year, which, of course, Lukashenko claimed victory on, but it was, as I say, highly disputed. The opposition protested those elections, and then there was a brutal crackdown by Lukashenko. Not just that, of course, but in May, this Ryanair jet that was forced to land in Belarus, an activist that was an opposition activist on board that was taken off. There was outrage in the European Union that that should have happened. So some real concerns over the behaviour, the continued bad behaviour of Lukashenko, but it seems that according to what the European Union and others are saying, is that he is pushing these migrants, convincing them that they can find an easy route into the European Union, which I think for a while was true. But of course, these European Union countries, Lithuania, Latvia and Poland now, that border Belarus, are saying no more, we're not going to accept this. So.
Gosh, no end in sight then, really.
Well, it's getting increasingly tense, so they are expecting more in the way of attempts to try to get across the border today by those that are massed there.
Mark, thank you very much for filling us in on all of that. Certainly an issue that's not going away anytime soon, and we'll be covering it for you throughout. Mark White there, Home Affairs and Security Editor. Well, yes.
Let's go to some of your views before we take a short break.
Yes.
Lots of views coming in on animal cruelty.
Loads.
Something we've been talking about this morning. Footage has emerged of a woman,
yes,
and a primary school teacher apparently.
Yes.
Kicking, punching a horse, and people have obviously become quite outraged at that. So Patrick did his monologue, and we've been asking, you know, what's the appropriate punishment for people who abuse, assault animals?
Yes, there's been some creative options, not all of which I can read out, but there's a range of views on this. It really has split people, actually. So this is from Angela, I think. I've grown up rurally and around horses, and that behaviour is disgusting. She should never be allowed near animals or children again. But then Barry's been in touch. You have to be firm with horses like that. She was right to whack it. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good, does it?
No, well, it certainly doesn't look good. I do think. Well, look, I think that what she did was wrong, and it certainly looks awful. It's it's bad. I can understand though. People, especially if you've been like brought up on a farm or something like that, you are desensitised. I think maybe to the sensitivities of animals, maybe, and you're just kind of more used to it. But I don't think there's any excuse for kicking a horse in the chest. Is there?
No. We'll show you that footage again a bit later, and keep your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But after the break, we'll have our controversy feature about a lady on a hunt being filmed punching and kicking a horse.
Relevant.
Literally what we've been talking about. It's a top story today, I think. It's got many of you talking at home. So we'll be talking about that after the weather.
Hi there. A three-way split across the UK for today. Cloud and rain in central areas, sunny spells to the north and the south of that rain, with blustery showers for the far north of Scotland. That's where the wet and windy weather was as we started the week, but the front responsible for that has sunk into central parts of the UK, and that's where the focus for, well, cloudy skies and outbreaks of rain will be for the rest of the day, especially for parts of Wales, northern England. Over the hills, the rain will be persistent with some reasonable breaks to the east of any higher ground. To the south, sunny spells and feeling quite warm actually in the sunshine, 15 or 16 Celsius. Colder conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland, having seen that front clear southwards with blustery showers for the north and west of Scotland as well as parts of Northern Ireland. And some more persistent rain turning up into the evening. That cloud and rain sinks south and eases, and then further blustery showers follow on behind. But with clear skies across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it will be a fairly chilly night, temperatures into the low single figures, a touch of frost in the northeast. Whilst it's a mild night across England and Wales, but a grey and gloomy start to Wednesday with those outbreaks of rain steadily pushing south and a lot of low cloud across much of England and Wales, covering the hills and leading to some coastal mist as well. The rain on and off, I think, across these parts of East Anglia, the Midlands, Wales as well into the afternoon. Not quite as warm because of the lack of sunshine, but it will be brighter in the far southeast and brighter again for northern England, Northern Ireland as well as Scotland. Further showers coming into the north and west of Scotland, and we keep that blustery wind going well into Wednesday. But a lot of low cloud there affecting the southern half of the UK. That sticks around for Thursday, a dull day to come with some drizzle and fog in places. Friday sees unsettled weather in the north, brighter further south.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. Now, the RSPCA is investigating after a woman was filmed seemingly punching and kicking a horse. So the woman has been condemned by anti-hunting campaigners, the organisation that oversees hunting with hounds in the UK, and the naturalist Chris Packham as well. Now, Hertfordshire hunt saboteurs have said that they filmed the incident on Saturday while observing the Cottesmore Hunt, which is based in Rutland and claims to trace its heritage back to the 17th century.
Now let's talk to Kate Werner, a Senior Campaigns Manager at People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, better known as Peter, who joins us now. We've been speaking about this all morning. It's got our viewers talking a lot, lots of disagreement as well. One gentleman emailed in not long ago and said, actually, it's not as bad as it looks. With some animals, particularly big animals like a horse, you do have to be a bit rough with them to get them to do what you want. Isn't there a bit of truth to this?
I mean, we would say absolutely not. Horses are sensitive, gentle-natured animals, and, you know, someone like this is clearly a violent bully who should be prosecuted for animal abuse to the fullest extent of the law. She really needs to have the book thrown at her and shouldn't be allowed to own or be around animals.
I mean, there is obviously a wider issue here as well, which is the issue of just hunting in general. Now, I did say earlier on that it's all very well and good saying that they go trail hunting, these people, but actually all too often it's just a ruse, isn't it? It's a complete and utter smokescreen for the fact they are just continuing to fox hunt. Is that an issue that Peter's trying to clamp down on?
Yeah, I mean, totally. We know now for sure. There was a leaked webinar last year organised by the Hunt Lobby where several notable people were advocating using trail hunting as a smokescreen for hunting and killing animals. And, you know, for this reason, the National Trust members recently overwhelmingly voted for the ban on trail hunting on National Trust land. And, you know, we championed that campaign and we hope that other landowners will take note and replicate this, because certainly we know that hunters are using trail hunting as a mask for what is just, you know, gratifying their sick hobby. So certainly we think it needs to be clamped down on.
What do you think the appropriate penalty should be? Because it's only just recently, really, as a country, the government has started properly looking at sentencing in terms of animal welfare, and they're obviously increasing those quite considerably. For you, what should the appropriate sentence be for animal abuse, something like this even?
Yeah, I mean, we're really pleased to see that the government is increasing the penalties for animal abuse. You know, certainly this person should be fined, and I think now you can go to jail for attacking an animal like this hunter was. So yeah, I mean, as the fullest extent of the law, as I say, is what she should face, because, you know, unfortunately, this isn't surprising, but she was caught on film. And whether it's horses, hounds, foxes, you know, hunters see animals not as the sensitive individuals that they are, but as things to exploit. And, you know, that has to be stopped. She should be made an example of, and encourage other hunters not to continue with this sick hobby.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, when it comes to fox hunting, the fox gets a very raw deal. And as I said earlier, if you're a horse, you might get punched in the face by a primary school teacher at some point. But also, the dogs are not treated that well either. I know that it's easy to forget the dogs because they're the ones ripping a fox apart. But actually, once they're no use to these people anymore, I mean, there was footage that emerged recently. They just dispose of them all too often. I mean, there was a video, harrowing video, don't watch it, by the way, of basically just shooting the dogs, right, once they're too old or whatever. I mean, so actually, there's every single element of fox hunting or trail hunting is bad for the animals, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, time and time again, we see violence exhibited by hunters and those they employ as part of the hunt to animals. And as you rightly say, the hunting dogs, the hounds, they're not kept as family pets. They're not having a lovely life as someone's companion. They're kept in kennels. And as you say, when they're too old to hunt anymore, they're shot, they're discarded. Fox hunting is completely incredibly cruel and archaic, and those that take part are a minority of depraved people who enjoy terrorizing and killing animals, and blood sports of any kind like this have no place in modern Britain, and the vast majority of the public are opposed to them. So yeah, you're completely right. I mean, in all aspects it's totally cruel.
The good work, Kate, and hopefully, I'm sure animals everywhere will be very grateful for it. Kate Verder, their Senior Campaigns Manager at PETA. Now, lots of you getting in touch on this, as you can imagine. It has actually, for want of a better phrase, really kicked off, actually, in the inbox when it comes to this issue of a woman, I know, poor taste, of a woman kicking a horse. And someone says that the horse should be allowed to kick her back. Now, we couldn't possibly have that, could we? Anyway.
I mean, it technically is allowed. I don't see why it wouldn't be allowed. There's no law against horses not kicking people.
No, also it would have been well within its rights as well. If someone did that to me, I'd kick them. Anyway, that behaviour was a complete loss of self-control and self-indulgence on behalf of that woman. That's from Edwina. I love horses, and she's never treated them like that. She needs anger management, apparently. And yes, slapping. I've owned a horse in the past, and she was exceptionally difficult to handle, but I never thought of slapping or kicking her. And believe me, she tried my patience, and that's from Elizabeth.
Yes, so I think that they've got to the heart of something there. Actually, this is a reflection of perhaps her temperament, this lady, and given the fact she appears to, it's been reported that she's a primary school teacher. I'm not sure, from what it seems, if that is her temperament, somebody you would want around your children who can often try your patience. So it'd be interesting to see what does come of this in relation to this woman maybe keeping her job. Not that I'm calling for her to be cancelled.
No, but I mean...
But it's an option.
It's an option, absolutely, yes. Lots of you are getting in touch about the GP's strike, or potential GP strike. I pounded the pavements of London earlier on yesterday, actually, and lots of you and surveyed the nation, or a snapshot of it anyway, about whether or not you would support a GP's strike. I'd be dead against it. I think it should be criminal. That's from Dave. Andrew says they should not be allowed to strike. Police aren't allowed to strike. Why are the GPs? Obviously, it's important to say they're not officially doing it yet, but I mean, it looks that way, doesn't it?
Yes, and we'll bring you the developments on that story with the British Medical Association and whatever happens with that GP strike ballot. So stay with us for that at some point. But after the break, it's being reported that compulsory jabs for NHS England staff are to be made official as early as today. And we'll be taking another look at that after this morning's news with Rosie.
I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. The government will reportedly announce compulsory COVID vaccines for frontline NHS staff in England. It's understood employees will be given a spring deadline for both doses. Around 100,000 NHS workers haven't yet had their first jab. The Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to apologise for the Tory sleaze row. Boris Johnson, who visited Northumberland yesterday, reportedly returned to London before a debate in the Commons had finished, but decided not to take part. Cabinet Minister Steve Barclay told MPs attempting to change the standard rules to prevent Owen Paterson from being suspended was a mistake. A 10-year-old boy killed in a dog attack in South Wales has been named by police as Jack Lees. Officers were called to an address near Caerphilly yesterday and confirmed the child died at the scene. The dog was destroyed by firearms officers. The husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe says he's in uncharted territory as he enters the 17th day of his hunger strike. Richard Ratcliffe wants the government to do more to secure the release of his wife, who's been detained in Iran for 5 years. Tensions are rising on the Poland-Belarus border, where thousands of migrants are gathering. It comes a day after hundreds of people broke through the barriers and entered Poland. Polish security forces describe the influx of migrants as a coordinated attempt to massively enter the territory, accusing the Belarusian government of launching hybrid attacks against the country. Thousands of ceramic poppies are going on display at Imperial War Museum North in Trafford near Manchester. The new artwork will comprise of thousands of the handcrafted ceramic poppies cascading 30 metres down and pooling within the air shard. You are right up to date. I'll be back with more on all of today's top stories in half an hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. Now, the government is set to announce that frontline staff in our National Health Service will be forced to be double jabbed. It's estimated that between 80,000 and 100,000 NHS workers in England are currently unvaccinated. A deadline is expected to be set for the spring to give those completely unvaccinated the chance to get both doses.
Yes, Thursday is the deadline for care home workers in England to get vaccinated. Well, let's talk to Dr. Lawrence Gurley, who's CEO of Same Day Doctor, which is a GP clinic, and he joins us now, I believe. He's popping up on the screen any second now.
Hi, Patrick.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for joining us. The government have obviously been floating this for a long time. It looks like they have decided they're going to go ahead with it. But let's be honest, they're not going to kick out all the nurses and staff who aren't double vaccinated, are they, when the deadline passes? So this, again, is just sort of not a serious policy, really.
You may be right, it may be saber-rattling, but let's wait and see. And my answer to this is those people should get vaccinated. I've had 3 vaccines, I've had COVID. And although I acknowledge the vaccine has some side effects, and in very, very rare cases, serious side effects, there's no reason for a healthcare worker not to be vaccinated. I know some people personally who have not been vaccinated, and I don't understand it. And there's a lot of myths, there's a lot of conspiracy theories on social media, distrust of authority, people saying the vaccine hasn't been tried. Well, if you think about the billions of doses that have been given worldwide, this is probably the most trialled vaccine, most trialled drug ever. So the short answer
is long-term data for people, isn't it? I suppose some people are considering, about the long-term data, etc., etc., etc. But I suppose it's being threatened, potentially anyway, being threatened with the loss of your job if you don't get it. Is there not a civil bodily autonomy argument at all?
Well, I think this has come in the wake of some figures that show a significant number of people catching COVID in hospitals. And if there are a large number of unvaccinated staff, then first of all, that's a risk to the health of the staff. That's also a risk to the other patients. And I would have thought that takes precedence over the civil liberties issues. I see no reason why a healthcare worker shouldn't have 2 vaccines. I don't see that as an imposition. Every year when I have my appraisal, I'm told I must get a flu jab. We have to have hepatitis B jabs. That's absolutely compulsory. Every locum, every nurse that works in hospital has to have a hepatitis B jab. So what's the difference? That path has already been crossed. There is already compulsory vaccination for healthcare workers. This is just another vaccine.
Well, one of the reasons, I suppose there's 2 arguments here. There's the argument about getting vaccinated and all the ins and outs of why people might not choose to do that. And there's the separate argument of whether you should have to be vaccinated to work in the NHS. And in respect to that second point, a lot of people get in touch with us and say, actually, what's the difference between a vaccinated and an unvaccinated person in respect to transmission? So what's the likelihood that they're not going to transmit the virus? And from your understanding, what is the data on that? Because that's the key point people are struggling with.
Yeah, vaccinated people can transmit the virus. That's disappointing, but it's true. But they are less likely to transmit it. They are certainly less likely to catch COVID and be very ill. And there's also, an HR element here. If someone's not vaccinated and they get COVID and they take a month off work because they've not been vaccinated, well, that deprives the workforce of a member of staff who would have come back to work much, much sooner had they been vaccinated. So again, I don't buy those arguments. I'm still very keen that all healthcare workers should be vaccinated and we can avoid a confrontation next spring.
OK, and actually now as well, just veering off slightly from the health workers angle of it, but apparently Pfizer are really trying to push the jab for 12 to 15-year-olds. The JCVI, of course, basically did conclude that there was not much need for this. Where are you on the jabs for kids issue?
I have always been a bit sceptical. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, obviously, by definition, if you listen to my previous comments. I think 12 to 15-year-olds don't get COVID very badly. There are a number of children that get myocarditis. That's been documented. I've never been keen on vaccinating that age group. And we hear stories from other countries, children as young as 6 being vaccinated and 6 to 11-year-olds, which is a complete nonsense. So I know a large number of children, 12 to 15, have already been vaccinated, but I think we should ease off a bit and save the vaccines for other parts of the world that haven't had vaccines, and maybe for doing the 3rd vaccine for the vulnerable and the elderly. I'm not desperately keen to vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds.
Thank you very much for imparting your views, as always. It's great to have you on board, Dr. Lawrence Gurlis there. Just discussing this idea now that essentially it's going to become compulsory if you want to keep your job. Anyway, it does annoy me, actually, when they go, well, it's not compulsory. Well, if you want to keep your job, it is, and that's a compulsory vaccine, isn't it? You go, well, you have got a choice. You could lose your income. Right, well, it's a compulsory vaccine.
I just don't buy it. They're clearly not going to. I mean, I'm not sure how many people that is. I'll have to look at the numbers again in terms of how many people this would affect, but they're clearly not going to kick out however many thousands of healthcare workers that, if anything, are crucial at this point in time as winter is approaching than at any other point in the year. So the idea that just because they're not double jabbed after from the deadline that they're going to be asked to leave, I just don't buy it.
Yeah, I find it. I'd be amazed, really. You know, we keep hearing, don't we, about how understaffed and under-resourced our beloved NHS is, and I very much doubt that they just want to bin off thousands of staff. But anyway, I suppose they've done silly things before. Now, moving away from the NHS jabs, a man who was severely injured after falling in a cave in the Brecon Beacons has been rescued after 2.5 days. So the South and Mid Wales Cave Rescue Team say the man, who's in his 40s, is in good spirits after being trapped for 54 hours.
Yes, he's said to be a very experienced cave climber and has visited the Ogoffinnon cave. Somebody will have to help me. Ogoffinnon.
Look, it's all Welsh to me.
Patrick is not impressed. He's visited the cave system before, which is where he fell in on Saturday, and officials confirmed this is the longest rescue mission in South Wales caving history, and I believe it's the longest rescue mission involving...
You should have just said cave. I don't know why you tried to say it in Welsh.
Involving a stretcher. He was carried on a stretcher for a very long distance, so it's the longest rescue mission as well, involving a stretcher in British history. So thought we'd give you a bit of good news story, because I mean, 2 days stuck in a cave, I mean, some people were not very hopeful.
No, not at all. Although the way the world's going, sometimes maybe you just want to stay there, I don't know. But yes. No, I think, have you ever been potholing? Serious question.
Potholing?
Potholing, caving, yeah.
Is that what it's called? What? No. Do I look like somebody who goes caving?
No, I thought maybe like the old school trip or something. I did. It was absolutely terrifying.
No, I mean,
absolutely
it's
terrifying.
Not
I'm not really built for it, to be fair.
Yeah, it's not for me. I mean, I could probably fit through many of the small spaces.
I on the other hand, I'm like a plug. So it's just getting there. I have to get pulled out by my feet. So, yes, not for me.
Well, let's go to some of your views. You've been... I think the animal story has been our most commented on story of the day. GBVs at GBNews.uk. And this idea of should this woman be punished for assaulting, some are saying, her horse.
Yes. Well, lots of you are saying. Well, Barry actually is one of the people saying this. Hunting. So they were apparently trail hunting. Hunting is a primordial instinct in humans. We have evolved to enjoy the thrill of the chase. So to dismiss hunting as a sick hobby is both ill-informed and fatuous. So Barry's got his view there. There's quite a lot of you who are saying, one person again, townies should stay out of rural issues. So actually there's quite a few of you there that are bang in favour of fox hunting. And but you are quite quiet, a lot of you, on whether or not you should have kicked the horse. But yes.
To be fair, I didn't. Peter, we had a lady from Peter on. People for the ethical treatment of animals, and they're seen as quite a. Some might say woke group, they are seen as that. And it was nice to see you agree with somebody who's considered woke once.
Well, yeah, I think when it comes... Well, I don't know, is there anything particularly woke about not wanting people to kick a horse?
I don't think there is. I think somebody did accuse you of going soft or something.
Yes, actually, there were a few people there when I said that I spoke earlier a bit about the idea that maybe we should have tougher sentences for people who abuse animals, and as well, when they steal dogs and household pets. At the moment, you can get sentenced to 7 years in prison if you do nick a dog. I just wonder whether or not it should be more, because, for a lot of people, the dog is like their brother or sister or their child, isn't it, really? So, yes, I wonder whether or not you should get tougher sentences. Yeah, here we go. Here's another one. Townies should keep their noses out of rural affairs. This is from Karen. Thank you very much, Karen. If you genuinely want to protect animals, then get engaged with stopping illegal puppy exports from Eastern Europe. There you go. Thank you very much, Karen.
Yes,
I'll keep my nose out of rural affairs.
Or just stop eating them is an option.
What?
Stop eating animals.
Oh, right, got you. Sorry, I thought I've got to a dark place.
Anyway, the ceramic poppies first seen at the Tower of London will be moved permanently to the Imperial War Museum North in Trafford, near Manchester. Thousands of handcrafted ceramic flowers will cascade over 30 metres within the museum's air shard, and the sculpture will be displayed from tomorrow, a day before Armistice Day, as part of remembrance events. Well, our North West of England reporter Bradley Harris went to find out more.
Thousands of ceramic poppies going all the way up the air shard here at Imperial War Museum North in Trafford near Manchester. The display will be available for the public to come and see tomorrow. We've got a sneak peek here on GB News this morning on the Great British Breakfast, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Laura Clouding, who is the Senior Curator here at Imperial War Museums. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Just tell me then, first of all, what are your thoughts? You're seeing it for the first time today.
It's an incredibly dramatic spectacle, isn't it? And I just think it's this incredible cascade of thousands of poppies cascading down the air shard, pooling at the bottom. It's such an intricate display. It's an impressive sight.
Now, Laura, just tell me about the decision to have it here in Manchester. There's a reason for that, because it's in the air shard and it's got something to do with its iconic architecture, is that right?
Yeah, Imperial War Museum North, it opened in 2002, and the design behind it really was to represent an Earth shattered by conflict. And so it brings together 3 dimensions of conflict: war in the air, war at sea, and war on the land. The kind of transformative, disruptive, devastating consequences of war are kind of reflected in the architecture of this building, which is sometimes a bit uneasy, sometimes incredibly dramatic. And so this really felt like the perfect place to put the poppies, just to get that sense of scale and mass, which is what comes through so strongly here.
And I vividly remember these poppies, of course, in 2014 at the Tower of London. Now they're here as part of a new installation. It wasn't a quick install either. It took a few weeks.
Well, you can just see the intricacy of the way this has been put together. It's taken several months to come up with this, to put it all together, lots of hard work. But I think the overall impression, hopefully visitors when they come here will be really taken aback by the spectacle, and we really hope people will be. Give people a chance to reflect really upon what is the poppy and what is it all about.
And the poppy, actually, just talking about that, that is a symbol that many people can relate with. Why do you think that is, and where do you think that's come from?
Well, the roots of this, the poppy as a symbol, really lie in the First World War. Now, when we think of that war, we think of devastated landscapes, of bleak, barren, kind of wasteland, when we think of the Western Front and the devastation caused by artillery. But there was a bright, colourful source of, if you like, botanical light, which was the colour of the poppy, the kind of crimson poppies, which actually grew in abundance on the Western Front. They caught the eyes of soldiers. Some of them plucked them, pressed them into letters, sent them home. They, of course, caught the eye of a soldier poet, John McCrae, who wrote a very famous poem in Flanders Fields, of which the poppy takes centre place. And it's from that that the poppy really becomes eventually, not immediately after the war, but eventually the symbol through which to really contemplate the human cost of the war, which is really every November why we choose to wear one.
Amazing. And as I say, it is going to be open to the public from tomorrow. What are you expecting from people when they see it for the first time?
I just think the abundance and the scale is what will hopefully take people aback. And that really taps into the fact that war shapes so many lives. War is so devastating, so transformative. And I think that mass reflects the sheer scale of how conflict has affected so many people, whether back then or even now, sadly.
Well, Laura Cloughton, the Senior Curator here at Imperial War Museums. Good to chat to you. I know we're going to be chatting to you a little bit later on this morning as well. An absolutely fantastic spectacle, as Laura said, and it will be open to the public from tomorrow.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Bradley, for bringing us that report. Now, moving away from that, a giant puppet of a 9-year-old Syrian refugee has completed a journey of 5,000 miles from the Turkish-Syrian border to the UK and finally up to Glasgow. I imagine it immediately wants to come back now. But anyway, the giant puppet called Little Amal has been sent on stage at COP26. And as we can see now, there we are. That's totally normal, obviously. She stands at 3.5 metres tall. And the aim of her presence is to raise awareness for the plight of refugees.
Yes, I mean, I still maintain it's completely creepy and sinister and just bizarre.
Massive dinghy across the channel as well, you would have thought.
Stop it. Stop it, you. No, it's. I just don't see how it's raising awareness.
No. Well, I suppose it is in a way. I mean, we are talking about it.
But how? I mean, what's the actual use? How much resources? How many resources, I don't know what the right word is, much, for the grammar pedants among us, but has gone into, lugging this thing from Syria to Britain up to Glasgow.
Well, it's all right, actually.
I mean, it probably would have, supposedly, presumably, it's raised money, I guess. But
well, I would have thought so, yeah.
They could have just donated to a refugee charity or something, I don't know.
They could have done.
It's not for me, basically.
No, she's actually moving in with Gary Lineker. Anyway, a £2 coin in the UK has sold for £500, and it appears that there are still some others in circulation, right? So, released 7 years ago to mark 100 years since the start of the First World War, the coin features an image of British war figure Lord Kitchener. Now the thing makes some of these coins worth £500,000. £500. But anyway, as if you happen to find one with the words £2 are missing on the head side, right? So if you can pick yourself through that minefield, basically, it's got a picture of Kitchener on it and the words £2 are missing. So if you've got one of those, then you could be in the money.
Yes, well, experts say some 5.7 million of these coins were struck from circulation, and it appears to be very rare to find one, but they still do exist. So if you can find one of those, you might be £500.
For a £2 coin.
I know, but still.
Strange, isn't it? Strange. I just find that a bit bizarre.
I suppose it's a collector's item, I guess. So, I mean, I didn't even know they'd gone out of circulation, those particular ones, so...
I've just been told in my ear that there are some Peter Rabbit 50p's out there, which are apparently Beatrix Potter limited edition. And that's a fully grown man, by the way, who's whispering that into my ear. So that's just in case you were wondering. That's an adult male. He's quite old, actually, and he cares a lot about Beatrix Potter coins.
I'm not sure he'll like that. He's the same age as you.
He looks worse for it, though, doesn't he? But yeah, so well, there you go. I just feel a little bit strange about the idea of paying more money than... for something that's money already. Does that make sense? They're paying £500 for a £2 coin. I just find it a bit strange.
But I mean, collectors will pay. I mean, things are worth however then somebody's willing to pay for it, isn't there? That's what the saying goes. So if somebody wants to pay 500 quid for a £2 coin, then
it's a free country, it was not.
Knock yourself out.
Yes, indeed. Well, absolutely. Well, look, let's go to a few of your views now. We always like to give you the final say, really, here on To The Point. And again, I tell you what, this animal rights issue has really resonated with you. We are, of course, a nation of animal lovers. It's in relation to a video that was doing the rounds of a woman who was a huntswoman who basically kicked a horse and slapped it around the face. And there we go. I'm a countryman to my roots, and I deplore cruelty to animals, including fox hunting. And your view is as relevant as anyone's, whether you're a townie or a rurally. Thank you very much, John. I've been copping it.
Because, you know, Patrick has had some criticism for saying she should get a very strong sentence or very strong penalty for doing that. And you've been called a townie, I believe. You know, some people are saying he doesn't understand sort of rural culture. Yeah. Okay. But I think that's a very valid point. Jackie,
some people are saying he's an idiot. Some people are saying, yeah, all right.
I can comment. But I think that's a valid point. I mean, it's a straightforward case of do you support somebody assaulting an animal, yes or no?
Essentially,
that's pretty much what it is. I mean, I don't think her behaviour was very necessary. But having said that, some people have got in touch and said, obviously, she can't physically harm the horse very much with just kicking it and slapping it a bit. There's the footage there.
Just kick it, but anyway.
So some people are saying sometimes you have to be a bit rough with animals, but to me, that just seems like somebody with a very poor temperament. And given that she's reported to be a primary school teacher, that's not ideal.
Yes. Quite a lot of you getting in touch as well about the potential for essentially mandatory jabs for NHS workers. Bit split again on this one, it does appear. Some of you are saying that you wouldn't want to be treated by somebody, or you wouldn't want your elderly relative, to be treated by somebody who hasn't had the vaccine. Some other people saying there should be laws against mandatory injections. Indeed, there are, but obviously they would argue that it's not mandatory because they say, well, you could just get a different job. So that's the way that they get around the idea of it being a mandatory jab. But I would argue that's still pretty mandatory, isn't it, I think?
I mean, it's as close to mandatory as you can get whilst sort of still living in a free society, I suppose,
Yeah, 100%. Yes, thank you very much for everyone who's been getting in touch, actually. And there's been a huge amount of you. We also I did a Vox Pop on the GP's strike. Went out and about in London, and it was fascinating to me. Where do you guys stand on this? GBviews at gbnews.uk. Whether or not you would support a GP strike, I think I can guess, really. But what I found fascinating was the sheer amount of people. I was just stopping people at random in the street. Pretty much every single one of them had a very recent disaster story when it came to trying to see their GP or trying to get medical care, etc., etc. I think it just paint a picture, really, of the fact that this is an issue happening across the country.
Yesterday we actually did a story on GPs might be forced to sort of work in deprived areas and to level up. And we spoke to some experts who said, actually, we just need more GPs. So this idea that on one day we can have this GP shortage, we need to redeploy GPs, and then on the other hand, we're going to ban people from working in the NHS if they're not double job. It just doesn't seem like a very coherent strategy at all in any way that whatever the government's trying to do with the NHS.
Well, look, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. That's it for us today. When we come back, it's going to be Gloria De Piero with the briefing. See you tomorrow.
Hi there. A three-way split across the UK for today. Cloud and rain in central areas. Sunny spells to the north and the south of that rain, with blustery showers for the far north of Scotland. That's where the wet and windy weather was as we started the week, but the front responsible for that has sunk into central parts of the UK, and that's where the focus for, well, cloudy skies and outbreaks of rain will be for the rest of the day, especially for parts of Wales, northern England. Over the hills, the rain will be persistent,
I know.
with some reasonable breaks to the east of any higher ground. To the south, sunny spells and feeling quite warm actually in the sunshine, 15 or 16 Celsius. Colder conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland, having seen that front clear southwards, with blustery showers for the north and west of Scotland as well as parts of Northern Ireland, and some more persistent rain turning up into the evening. That cloud and rain sinks south and eases, and then further blustery showers follow on behind, but with clear skies across Scotland and Northern Ireland. It will be a fairly chilly night, temperatures into the low single figures, a touch of frost in the northeast. Whilst it's a mild night across England and Wales, but a grey and gloomy start to Wednesday, with those outbreaks of rain steadily pushing south and a lot of low cloud across much of England and Wales, covering the hills and leading to some coastal mist as well. The rain on and off, I think, across these parts of East Anglia, the Midlands, Wales as well into the afternoon. Not quite as warm because of the lack of sunshine, but it will be brighter in the far southeast and brighter again for northern England, Northern Ireland as well as Scotland. Further showers coming into the north and west of Scotland, and we keep that blustery wind going well into Wednesday. But a lot of low cloud there affecting the southern half of the UK. That sticks around for Thursday, a dull day to come with some drizzle and fog in places. Friday sees unsettled weather in the north, brighter further south.
Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, Monday to Thursday from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. We don't lecture to you or try to tell you what to think. We do a deep delve into a topic with views from across the range of debate, therefore leaving you, the viewer, to make up your own mind. Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, 4 till 6, Monday to Thursday. You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so